there's a big controversy because Colin Kaepernick put out an ad with Nike, or vice versa rather. Nike put out an ad with Colin Kaepernick, and it had his eyes, very grim face, and he said, believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. And I'm looking at both sides of the debate. You have the right wing, burning shoes, saying they're going to sell them or give them to charity, just mad and upset. And then you have the left wing and maybe the social justice crowd saying, oh, look at all these white people be crazy, they're so rude, they don't understand our struggle, they don't understand police brutality, they don't want to face up to the racism that Colin Kaepernick's trying to talk about. So to really break the echo chamber of both sides, I really want to say something first that every social justice warrior needs to listen to, every Colin Kaepernick supporter needs to listen to, every Black Lives Matter activist and liberal or progressive or whatever you want to call yourself, is this Colin Kaepernick situation is just a metaphor and a total perfect representation of the hypocrisy of the social justice movement in the United States. Because if Nike really cared about black people like I do, if Nike really cared about black lives and Black Lives Mattered to Nike, why doesn't Nike move their factories to black neighborhoods in America? If Nike loves black people as much as their ad is trying to say, why don't they move their factories to black neighborhoods and give jobs and opportunities to the black people that Nike claims to care so much about in their advertisement campaign? Well, if you're wondering why Nike doesn't move its factories to black neighborhoods in America, it's because Nike's factories are mostly in Asia, Indonesia, China, Taiwan, India, Thailand, Vietnam, Pakistan, Philippines, and Malaysia. So why would Nike have its factories in Asia? Well, it's because there's very, very cheap labor. Some reports would call it slave labor. Some reports would call it child labor. Some reports would call it sweatshops. But I'm just going to tell you, Nike is a perfect representation here with Colin Kaepernick of the fake social justice movement in America. Because I'm a real social justice warrior. I'm a real social justice advocate. I stand up for black, Latino, white, Asian. It doesn't matter to me. Good people being oppressed worldwide. But American activism, mainstream American feminism, mainstream American black activism, and even now mainstream LGBT activism, which has been hijacked by political, leaders, is a total flat-faced lie. So you're going to protest saying that we stand behind Colin Kaepernick and his message of police brutality and inequality in America, yet that person's going to take who knows how much money from a company that literally works with sweatshops all over Asia, Indonesia, China, Taiwan, India, Thailand, Vietnam, Pakistan, Philippines, and Malaysia, instead of moving their factories to black neighborhoods in America. And this is the political thing. The Democrats will pander and say, we love black people more than you, but their actions always go against their words. And it's the same with these corporations that are just exploiting black America to make a few sales or to try to hop on the political circus and get a lot of support. So beyond just that obvious hypocrisy of we love black people so much we're going to send our factories overseas and exploit them and use them in an advertisement, what other hypocrisy is going on there? Because I've done reports on black and Latino prison rates. I think there's way too many nonviolent drug offenders locked up in prison for a long time, especially when you have someone in New Mexico killed his own kid, raised kids to shoot up a hospital in Atlanta. This guy did some bad stuff, and he got off scot-free. Yet we have nonviolent black and Latino and white drug offenders in jail for 10, 20 years. That doesn't make sense to me. So with that, I'll agree with Colin Kaepernick. But once again, just like I told you, the fake activism of Nike and this whole advertisement, basically promoting sweatshops, but not actually doing anything for black America when it comes to like physical actual help. It's all words, no action. What else is hypocritical about this? Well, I'm going to just read some statistics that nobody wants to hear, because the emotions behind this activist movement is so big that the emotions kind of trump reality. But since I care about Black lives, I'm going to go out on a limb and read these statistics. These are from 2016. I'm sure 2017 is pretty similar, but I have the 2016 Black homicide statistics in front of me. So there were 7,881 Black Americans that were killed. It's way too high of a number. I agree with Colin Kaepernick there. 7,881 homicides in Black America. 233 of them were considered, 233 of those Black lives were murdered by police officers, and 233 of those were armed and dangerous, though. There were only 16 unarmed murders by police of Black people. I did the math myself instead of listening to other people. That's 0.002% of Black lives. So 0.002% of Black people, Black homicides were from unarmed people with the police. 0.002. That's significantly less than 1%. That's significantly less than 0.01%. So a ridiculously small amount of Black homicides were murdered by police, and a ridiculously even smaller amount was unarmed people. And out of those unarmed, how many were threatening, how many weren't? That's for you to decide if you pay attention to the media. So am I saying not to talk about this? Am I saying that Colin Kaepernick shouldn't talk about this and raise awareness to this, and Nike shouldn't raise awareness to this and stand behind it? Not at all. I'm saying have a conversation about it. Any life is a bad life. Anybody murdered is bad, whether it be this side, this race, this religion. It's not good. Talk about it all you want. But what I am telling you, just like Nike, just like the Democratic Party, just like the progressive socialist movement, just like Black Lives Matter, and just like these feminist organizations that are politically charged, they put a microscope on 0.002, and they talk about it 24/7. That's all they talk about. All I'm asking for is to have a full conversation if you really care about Black lives, if you care about the 99.98% of Black lives that Colin Kaepernick doesn't want to talk about, that the media doesn't want to talk about, that the Democratic Party doesn't want to talk about, that white hipster kids that work at Vice and Vox and Huffington Post don't want to talk about. I'm just wondering why 99.9% of the media coverage is about 0.002% of Black lives. To me, that sounds like somebody that hates Black people. If I wanted to keep Black people oppressed and I wanted to get Black people murdered, I would do what Colin Kaepernick does, and what the Democratic Party does, and what the media does, and what activists does, and what Huffington Post does, and Vox. Sounds to me like they want Black people to die because they're putting a microscope on the smallest percentage, and they're silencing and cutting off the discussion around the biggest majority of Black lives. And the reason that Black people are getting murdered, not just in homicides, but you could also say opioid, food, convenience stores, and the terrible conditions and availability of important things such as health access and other things, and taking care of yourself, all of this stuff. I'm just saying, this is the big hypocrisy when it comes to Colin Kaepernick, is he doesn't want to talk about that. And my big problem with it, and why I'm going out on a limb to say it now, is I really genuinely do care about Black lives. And outside of all of the madness that is the world, that is police that are corrupt. I'm not saying police are perfect. I know that they're corrupt. I know in some cities they're ridiculously corrupt. But self-accountability and self-awareness and self-responsibility is a really good way to be successful in this world. Self-accountability, self-responsibility, and self-awareness is the way to start from nothing and make something of yourself, is blocking out all of the things that you don't have and focusing on your blessings and focusing on the materials you do have to make a path for yourself to success. And in this country, every race and religion is lucky enough that we have the opportunity to do that. Is why billions of people all over the world try to come to America every year. Billions of people, billions with a B, want to come to America for the opportunities that we of all colors and races and religions take for granted. So my problem with the media and Colin Kaepernick is not that they're talking about police brutality and murders and police corruption. My problem with it is they're putting the microscope on the smallest percent, and they're blocking out and ignoring the largest percent. So they don't care about Black lives. I care about Black lives. They don't care about black lives. And then they teach this grandiose message of no self-accountability, no self-awareness, no self-responsibility. And I guarantee you phony leaders like Colin Kaepernick, and I've supported him. I said freedom of speech. I think he's made some good points, and I don't think he's a bad person. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say that I believe that the media's coverage of black lives and leaders like Colin Kaepernick, I'm not saying them themselves, have gotten black people murdered more than the police ever will and ever have, because it is a mass mindset that they have bestowed upon the black community in America, that they have force-fed down their throat. And it is a failed ideology that will get you murdered, that will get you into trouble, and that won't raise you to success. If I wanted my kid or my friends or my family to end up in jail or dead, I would say have no self-accountability, have no self-awareness, have no self-responsibility, don't take any of that stuff, do whatever you want, blame the police, blame America, blame everything, and never admit when you're wrong, or never try to be better, or never try to be the change you want to see in the world. That's how, if I wanted to make somebody unsuccessful, I would tell them that. And that is the mindset that they have bestowed upon black America, because black is supposed to be a color. Black, white, white's a color, black is a color. Black people aren't really black. A lot of them are brown and light skinned, and a lot of people white are not even really white. They're tan or pink or who knows what nowadays, mixed like myself. But black has become a mentality in America, and it's not a mentality that started with, I don't even believe it started with black people. I don't think it's truly black culture. I think it's been a media trap from the very beginning, where somebody like Candace Owens or Larry Elder or, Ben Carson or anybody that starts to try to be successful and wealthy and intelligent and, follow, a path to success, but also teaches people self-accountability and self-responsibility, all of a sudden people tell them, you're not black. So black isn't a color, according to these people. If Candace Owens is not black and, Ben Carson's truly not black, what people are admitting is that black in America is no longer a color to try to say what shade of skin you are. It's a mentality, and it's a failed mentality. I don't care if it's coming from white people. Millions of white people have that mentality too, and I tell them every single day it's a failed mentality, and I don't tell them because I hate them. I tell them because I love them, and it's a failed mentality. Just like there's certain political structures, they never work because it's a whole failed ideology that will lead you to your own demise. Having no self-accountability, no self-responsibility, no self-awareness, and thinking that big government is the solution. So bigger government, higher taxes, more social programs that statistically and historically have never worked and led to the demise of the black community and the white community and anyone else that's been on it long-term and too dependent on it. So no taking self-accountability yourself, but expecting big government, which historically big government has led to millions of murders. I mean, I think even the biggest Colin Kaepernick supporter, they say government is corrupt. Colin Kaepernick would say, I don't like the federal government. The government's corrupt. I agree. Then if the government's so corrupt, why are you trying to make it bigger? Why are you trying to take your tax dollars and put it into the hands of the federal government? But that's leftist ideology. They don't even understand that they're being duped. They say, we hate the government, but because we're so easily manipulated and controlled via media racial narratives, we'll give up our own money and our ability to start a small business and our ability to be successful. We'll give all that up for this racial narrative of 0.002% of black lives. So I'm just letting people know, you can have these conversations about police brutality. You could have these conversations about Nike. I'm not saying to boycott, do as you please. I'm really not that worried or upset about it, but I'm just letting people know the truth. The blatant hypocrisy is Nike's factories are mostly in Asia. If they really cared about the black community, they'd move all of their factories back to the United States. They have the money. They make billions of dollars in profit. Apparently, according to Zero Hedge, they lost $4 billion just over the last 48 to 72 hours via stocks. But Nike's factories are in Asia. If they really care about black lives and black Americans, move your factories to America. But they won't do that. They just like to talk. They just like the lip service. They just like to mislead people. And people that have this racial ideology of, I will support any black celebrity that panders to me and has the victim mentality, but I'm going to hate on any black celebrity that has strength and wants to uplift me and keep me out of trouble. It's an ideology of pure destruction. And also, 2 weekends in just Chicago alone, there's more people murdered every 2 weekends than there are all year by unarmed. So it's not the epidemic. It's a total media fabricated lie that's meant to keep the black community down. And I don't know a nicer way to say it. I'm saying this because it's just true, and I really want to help people, and I can't stand that so many people have this ideology. And then it's a flip-flop ideology of, like I said, we hate the government, but we want to give our money and power and control and put the whole health industry into the hands of the federal government. You're being lied to. You're being deceived. It's just like we love Nike because they stand up for black people, except they moved all their factories to Asia so they could work in sweatshops. I mean, does the words matter? Or does the ad matter? Or do their actions matter? Actions matter more than words, and people haven't, unfortunately, figured that out yet. And just to wrap it up, the slogan was, believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. I'll read it again. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. This ideology can be compared to suicide bombers and radical terrorists in the Middle East. Believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. I mean, literally a terrorist could be like, yeah, I believe in something, and now I'm going to sacrifice everything. It's just not really good advice. It's very broad, and a lot of the cruelest people in the world. I'm not trying to target just radical terrorists. There's a lot of bad people, terrorists all over the world of all races and religions, but it's just really bad advice, just like pretty much everything that they do. And on that note as well, I do want to say, while I've been very supportive of Colin Kaepernick, I've told people, he calls it out on both sides sometimes. I've said that he has the freedom of speech to say and kneel and do whatever he wants to do. But I also want to point out that a lot of people don't realize he wasn't a starting quarterback when he started kneeling. He wasn't like Muhammad Ali, where he was the greatest in the world, like people are trying to say, where Muhammad Ali was the greatest in the world and he spoke out against war, very, very noble, even if you don't agree with it. Colin Kaepernick was a bench player when he started kneeling. So it's not even when he was at the top of his game. He waited till he fell to the bottom of his game to start complaining, which is, at least should be mentioned. And I'm not saying I think he should be in the NFL on some team. I think he's good enough to play. But it's not like you're here winning a Super Bowl and then you say it. It's like you wait till you're not even starting and then you make the big deal. And it kind of goes with that ideology, that whole failed ideology of I'm constantly going to complain, blame others, and not focus on the big picture to really help people. And on that note, I also want to say he's half white. So it's like me, I'm quarter Puerto Rican, quarter Italian. It's like me being the leader of Italian and Puerto Ricans. They're like, bro, you're not even fully black. But like I said, they've convinced black people that it's not a color or it's not an ethnicity, that it's an ideology. And it's a mind-controlled trap to lead you into the wrong direction. And like I said, I'm not saying injustices don't exist. I'm not saying police brutality and corruption doesn't exist. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying if you're constantly going to hyper-sensationalize the 0.002% of black homicides and the 0.00002% of black lives lost, then can we have a conversation about the 99.998% of black lives that nobody talks about, and the fact that the loudest social justice activists are the phoniest people? The loudest companies that are getting behind the social justice movements are the least social justice driven companies in the country. And that's why, not to get political over it, but that's the reason that President Trump won. People know that he says maybe some ugly truths sometimes or some things that people don't want to hear, but people would rather the blunt truth, or at least let you know how you feel, rather than somebody who lies to your face and then is responsible for 99% of black lives lost. What could be more cowardly and fake than that? And the black community, and also the liberal community and the progressive community, and to be honest, white conservatives as well, everybody can benefit from self-awareness, self-accountability, self-responsibility, and also don't be so naive. Don't be so weak and foolish to follow these false leaders to your demise. And this goes for every race, every political party, because I always say all the time, Change yourself to change the world. Everybody wants to change the world, but they can't even be the change that they want to see in the world. It sounds corny, but on a psychological level, it's the reason that we're in all these trouble. It's not, no one wants to hear this. Conservatives don't want to hear it. Democrats don't want to hear it, but I'm going to say it. It's not the politicians' fault. It's not the billionaires' fault. It's not the bankers' fault. It's not, the media's fault. It's your fault and my fault and our fault for buying into it. These media companies would not make a single dollar profit if you didn't always watch them and buy their ads and support what they're selling. These billionaires wouldn't be billionaires if you weren't one way or another buying or supporting their products. These companies would not be multi-billion-dollar companies if you didn't buy and support their products. These politicians would not be in office if you didn't vote for them and support them. Some of the loudest voices in the social justice movement are following around the fakest racial leaders. They're following around the fakest politicians. Yet they're the loudest. They want to tear Trump down and tear America down, but they're the loudest ones. It's always that way because people don't have self-awareness, self-accountability, and self-responsibility. Everybody wants to tear down, but nobody wants to build up. And what does it lead to? It leads to black lives and many other lives being lost. In Chicago, why are so many black people getting murdered in Chicago? It's because not only, inner city violence, but the police don't want to go to those neighborhoods. Why don't the police want to go to those neighborhoods and save good people who have to deal with murders all the time? Because they don't like the police in Chicago because they listen to people like Colin Kaepernick and Democratic Party media and progressive liberal media, socialist media. So they think we hate the police. People continue to murder each other and the police don't want to go in. It's not because the police don't want to help. I'm sure Chicago's so corrupt, they probably don't. I'm not saying they're perfect either, but I don't know. But they don't go, they can't help because no one likes them. So if you don't like the police, you don't like America, you're going to find out what anarchy looks like, and it's not pretty. It's going to be a war zone. You're going to find out what the Middle East is like and what Africa's like, and it's not pretty. In many places, it is beautiful. It's a beautiful country, has beautiful people, but in many cases, it's a war zone. So if you hate America so much and you hate police so much, I hope you're ready for the Middle East. I hope you're ready for Africa. I hope you're ready for war. I hope you're ready for real poverty. I hope you're ready for real oppression, like the people who have to work in these sweatshops that you would never work in America. That's why they don't have them here, because no one would work under those conditions. I hope you're ready. You reap what you sow, Colin Kaepernick. You reap what you sow, progressive liberals and socialists. So you hate America, you hate police. Get ready for real poverty, real war, and real, anarchy. If you don't like police and you don't like ICE, then there's going to be child trafficking is going to go up. Rape is going to go up, and the tens of thousands of millions of people that they help amongst the very small percentage that they don't. And like I said, I'm not saying police are perfect. I know they're corrupt. I know they do bad things, but anarchy is not better. If you want to find out, best of luck to that. So overall, that's the story. I'm willing to talk about what Colin Kaepernick wants to talk about, what Nike wants to talk about, but this whole narrative that white people be so crazy and man, they don't understand us. They don't want to talk about racism. They don't want to talk about it. And it's not just the black community in America or a fraction of it. It's white liberals. There's mostly, and Jewish liberals and, Indian and Asian liberals, whatever you want to say. They're just as bad, if not worse. They're a lot of times orchestrating all of this division at high levels in big media organizations. Like they're the journalists putting out all this information. So I'm not blaming specific people, but it's like, let's have a conversation about the 99.99%. Stop over-sensationalizing the 0.002% and stop leading people to their own demise, because it's really not helping. And this narrative that conservatives and Republicans don't understand what's going on. Some are ignorant, some are crazy, some are, arrogant, but a lot of people do get what's going on. Maybe look in the mirror, do a self-accountability, self-reflect for a week, and maybe just consider what I'm saying. And you might just realize that it's actually both sides have bad people. Both sides are wrong in some ways. Both sides are foolish. But this social justice movement and this leftist movement that is such a far cry from the JFK leftist days is one of the most embarrassing, hypocritical, and counterproductive movements I've ever seen in my lifetime. And that's why I spent so much time, awakening millions out of this slumber that will lead to your own demise. On that note, I want to talk about